We desperately need to talk about knobs, obviously. If there's one thing I've seen a lot of people having trouble with in the Helix, it is the clean Fender amps. Now, this is beyond, you know, sort of beginner kind of trouble, if you get what I mean. So this is people that even have been using the units for ages that maybe say, like, the Fender amps just don't really work for me, don't sound right. The issues that I think people will have is that, A, they'll say the clean headroom is just not there. And I think a lot of us have experience maybe playing with a real Fender amplifier, and it's actually a wonderful thing, in my opinion, where it's like this amazing bouncy clean, and, you know, actual cleans. And I think when you switch over to the Helix, you're like, right, well, I'll set my Fender Twin on like 3, you know, that might be where I'd have it on the amp in real life. It's like, well, this is like not clean. And that's kind of, I think, an experience that a lot of people have had. The other more easy to solve issue is that the Fender amps in the main seem to be like quite a bit quieter relative to other amp models in the Helix. So we can solve that pretty easily. But why is it that these Fender amps sound a bit weird? Is it that Line 6 don't know what they're doing? Is it that Ben, Adrian and Sam, when they're modeling these amps, just you know, sticking their finger in the air and going, well, is that how you, the wind? But what do you do with a finger? Or have they got really bad Fender amps at Line 6 HQ? Or is there something else to it?
This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
Now, the Fractal boys have actually figured this out. I've never seen anyone talking about this in the context of Helix, but I have seen on forums in Fractal. Now, the issue is this.
So here we have a 1964 Fender Pro Reverb, and the thing is, you see here, volume starts at 1. It's also, you know, like on a Marshall style amp, where you can kind of see with your eyes, like, whereabouts on the dial we're at, right? So it's kind of like you can go, well, that's about a third of the way up, so about 3. the Fender dial is not really quite like that, so it's like offset, right? So 0, actually what would our 0 be about? Maybe where the 6 is, then the 6 goes to here. Anyway, but you see we go from 1 to 10. And so like 6 is actually about the middle of the dial, right? 1, 6, 10. 6 goes from there to there. That's kind of what is, I think, at the root of many of our problems with like the Helix tones. If you look at a Tweed amplifier, that even more confusingly goes from 1 to 12. It doesn't correspond at all with the sliders that we've got in Helix. The same is obviously true for treble and bass as well. So in effect, we need to retranslate our knobs. I've always said that.
This will apply to the Fender Blackface amplifiers, but also the Tweed amplifiers do not go from 0 to 10 like our sliders in Helix do. This is kind of the problem with like a generalized approach to this stuff. And if you look at a conversion table, what that essentially means is that the Helix amp model on 0 will be the equivalent to the Fender on 1. The Helix amp model on 1.11 will be equivalent to the actual amp on 2, which is about actually where you can run a deluxe reverb or a pro reverb at a gig volume. You right? High five. High five. High five. High five. High. Oh! Bang! She climbed all the way up. At 3, the real amp 3. Anyway, you could look at the graph and compare them, but that is the key to why I think the Helix amps don't sound right when you have some reference of what a Fender amp might sound like. This is absolutely gone to shit. High five. That bottle.
That's today's.
Hopefully. And so let's take that knowledge and try and dial some things in a bit differently. For instance, you know, I've copied Eric Johnson's deluxe reverb twin settings in the past, and yeah, they're obviously what should have been way different. What's going on?
Hello, do you know how much to pay?
Shark. Shark. Your first hat. Fancy that? Yes, hat. Oh. So hopefully you'll come with me on this little adventure and get into the weeds a little bit. One of the things that I quite often might do with a Fender amp in real life, I'd probably have it at about 2 and start with my bass and treble at about 5. Now, we shouldn't really be touching the mids control if we want authenticity, and nor should we be touching the master if we want authenticity. There's no reason not to for other reasons. So that would be my starting point, right? So I'd be thinking that that would be a clean tone. Let me just pull up a cab. My first experience here is going to be very quiet. So one thing we could do to deal with this initially, it is definitely not very loud, right? So we could put in line a gain block after the amp because we don't want to boost the amp, but so if we've got it on 2 on the amp in Helix, what would that be in real life? It would actually be closer to 3, right? And then the other point is that our bass and treble at 5 on the real amp, we should have these at about 4.4. So closer to this. And if we actually want it to be 2, we'd want it to be down here at like 1.1. So this is where a real Fender amp on 2 with the settings at 5, the setting should be like 4.4, 4.4 and 1.1. It's definitely a very low volume. Maybe you need another gain block. But that is
the reality of where things would need to be actually like your Fender clean. So let's set this to snapshot 3, rename volume 2, which a deluxe reverb on 2 at home might be about where you might really get things. And that would still be quite loud in real life. Now let's try this one here. We're going to try our volume on 3, which, looking at our table, 3 should be about 2.2. So we'll take this up via snapshot. Controller assigned snapshots, 2.2. And hopefully now, eight and a half is about where it starts to level out, so it would be then roughly equal on both. But of course, we probably would then need to get rid of both of those. That volume is now way louder, so volume on 8. So how would we manage that? I presume have to basically use this channel volume, right? Or go over here as well, and the level on the cab needs to come down with snapshots. Like, you just see it's just so much quieter that it's almost, it's almost difficult to know what you really should be doing with that. Because anyway, let's see what it would do if we were to chuck like a tube screamer in front of this. It's definitely a challenge, really, because there's such a wide range of volume. I think that's a starting point. So if you're someone who's kind of going to be looking for it as a clean pedal platform type vibe, which is of course partly, you know, how many of us think of a Fender style amplifier, then you're going to really need to inline sort of boost that volume, and that drive should really be at about 1.1, which would be your Fender amp on 2. And then you might build your preset around that, wherever that is, and start to bring up the level. And just be wary that if you switch to any other amp from this point, it's going to basically just get quite loud quite quickly. We could take snapshots, take that back down. But you know, our volume on 8. It's almost like Line 6 were disincentivizing us from using the Fender amps clean. But they sound so good when you actually get them clean that I think it's a shame to be missing out on that. So let's just build a little bit extra into this. And I guess this preset really is going to be sounding best, I think, if you just stick with one snapshot and then kind of switch in and out the drives. I hope you've learnt something from this too. What I would suggest is sticking with one snapshot at a time with this particular preset, because there's going to be kind of quite big level differences. Or the other suggestion might be that we could start with our deluxe reverb sort of at 2.2 on the drive, and that would be the same as having the amp on 3, and the bass and treble at 4.4, which would be the same as having the amp start with the bass and treble at 5, which is probably about where we might start with a real deluxe reverb, right? In my opinion, anyway. And then build your preset around that. And, you know, typically a deluxe reverb you might use with some other pedals and more like a pedal platform. And so boosting the level like this with the delay or with inline gain before the cab might not be a bad idea at all. That could totally work. And you'll find then that you get significant level boost from your pedals up front. It feels a lot more familiar to me, you know, like a Fender amp with a tube screamer. Give that a try. I think that's a key to better Fender tones, personally. And let me know how you get on with that. You know, probably going to work out better for you than what you might be trying already. Catch you in another video soon. Cheers.